Welcome to Second Saturday. My name is Alfonso Severos, and my guest today is Vicky Urena. Hey, Vicky, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
I'm good,
All
good.
right.
We have had conversations about identity, and I'd like to talk about that. But I want to open it up by a little bit that W.E.B. Du Bois wrote in 1903 in his book Soul for Black Folks. And he was talking about dual consciousness. Having more than one social identity makes it hard to develop your own sense of self. This idea of measuring yourself through the eyes of others. You, as a woman,
Yes.
as a Latino, Dominican, as a Dominican American, and as a Latino Dominican American woman of color.
Yes.
How does this fit into your definition and your identity of yourself?
Well, for the longest, I didn't know exactly which identity was really my own. You know, at home, I was Dominican. You know, we spoke Spanish. We followed the cultural norms of my parents' country. But outside of my home, I was American. And for the
Right.
longest, I had no idea I was black in race. I had no idea that there was this whole duality that it was Dominican American, you know, until I went back to my parents' country and I was no longer Dominican there.
What do you mean by that? How old were you, and what do you mean by that?
Well, I've been going back and forth since I was a child.
Right.
But my first memories of going there, I noticed that I didn't speak the way my cousins spoke. They spoke very fast, and I couldn't really keep up
Yeah.
with what they were saying because at home I spoke minimum Spanish. My father really wanted me to home in on English because it was like a sign of stature if your child knows English.
Even if you lose your Spanish.
Even if you lose your Spanish, it was stature. My child speaks fluent English.
Right.
You know,
Now you were raised in Washington Heights,
I was raised in Washington Heights / Harlem.
which is the largest Dominican community in the country. Am I correct?
Yes, yes. So I was used to the entire neighborhood speaking Spanish. That's where I got my Spanish from. It's the street language Spanish.
Yeah.
So when I went back home to my parents' country, they spoke actual Dominican Spanish, and some of them spoke Castilian Spanish, and
Yeah.
that really threw me off. And to them, I wasn't Dominican.
What were you?
Gringa.
Gringa.
Gringa. I was
Right.
the American.
The American.
The American. And I used to tell them, no, I'm not American. The white people are American. They're like, no, you're like them. You're American. So I was confused. I didn't look like a white person. Every magazine I picked up was Vogue, Cosmopolitan. Those ladies there, even though they were beautiful, they didn't look like me.
Okay.
And when you turn on the TV, my mother had the novellas on all day. All day, that's all I heard was Porfirio, Maria.
Did you watch American television? Did your mother watch much American
It
television?
was like, if you're gonna watch American television, you need to go to your room.
Yeah.
Like, it was mostly Hispanic, Channel 41, Channel 47, and even the actors there, they didn't look like me. They didn't have my hair color. Most of them didn't even have my skin tone color.
Okay.
So I felt out of place.
Yeah.
And then some of my cousins back home, they were very fair skinned. They were either very fair skinned or very dark skinned. And I noticed that I got along more with my dark skinned relatives than with the one that were fairer.
Is there reasons for that, do you think?
I guess it was because there was this whole thing that the lighter you were, the better you were as a person.
Right.
My mother used to tease me about my hair. She had very straight hair.
Right.
I was born with a combination of both my father and my mother.
Were your father and mother the same complexion?
No, my father was darker than my mother.
Okay.
And there's a history in my family where the light-skinned women are usually attracted to very dark men.
Interesting family.
But if you ask them, what are they won't tell you they're black.
No, yeah.
It's taboo almost to even say that you're black. What do you mean you're black? Even the dark-skinned Dominicans will tell you, I'm not black, I'm Indian. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
But you're black. You're black.
Well, Dominican Republic has that long history
Yeah.
with dealing with color, especially dealing with Haiti
Yes.
and Haitians. But I see some changes in the younger generation in terms of acceptance and identity. But let's go back to your story before we talk about the younger generation. When you traveled outside of Washington Heights, how did you fit in? Like school, elementary school, high school?
Well, I went to elementary school in Washington Heights, but when I
Okay.
went to high school, I went to an all-girl academy on 34th Street. That changed everything.
Catholic school?
Catholic school. Oh boy. 34th Street, Catholic school, all girls. They were cliques. And I didn't fit in with the black clique because I was too light skinned. I didn't fit in with the Hispanic clique because I was too dark skinned. And I definitely did not fit in with the white counterparts at my school. So I was kind of like in the middle.
How did this play out in your life in terms of your feelings and what you thought about yourself? Did you think of yourself as being beautiful or being odd?
I thought of myself as being odd. I didn't know that I was beautiful until way into my adulthood. Because everywhere you turn, the images that are projected in the media, they don't look like you.
Yeah.
You know, even when I turned into hip hop and I turned into and embraced some of the urban culture, those images didn't look like me.
Yeah.
You know,
But hip hop culture seems to be open and incorporated and inclusive to all folks.
yes.
You know.
And that's the only place I felt like home. When I listened to hip hop, I felt like I was right.
Right.
There was no oddity in my looks. I fit in. You know, but when I listened to my Caribbean music, depending on what type of music, I fit in. Most of the Caribbean music in Dominican Republic, that's criollo music, that's basically like country music, they always mention la morenita, la trigueñita.
Translate.
Morenita trigueñita is that dark-skinned woman. And the men, when they mention morenito or moreno, is a term of endearment. Whereas here in the United States, is used as a derogatory term.
Yeah.
So it was normal for me to say, hey, Moreno, whereas some of my black friends were like, don't you dare call me Moreno.
Right.
But with us, it was a term of endearment. There was no negative aspects to it.
Yeah. I'm much older than you. You can't tell, I know. But when I grew up in the 50s, this city was clearly sectioned off. There were whites, there were blacks, and there was what we categorized anyone who spoke Spanish as Spanish.
Yes.
You know, and I saw and operated in the world that way because that's the way things operated. I didn't, until I got a little older, realize that when you talk about people who speak Spanish, you're talking about a whole broad spectrum of people. And the first Spanish-speaking people that I came in contact lived in my building, and they were, Puerto Rican. And then when I first got exposed to Dominicans, one of the first things I noticed is this rainbow of color.
Yes.
This rainbow of color, of shades of all types of browns and what have you.
Yeah.
And that was interesting.
Yes. And in that shade of rainbows of colors, certain things would get lost.
Yeah.
You know, you'll meet some Dominicans that embrace their Afro-Latino roots, and then there's some Dominicans that do not embrace it, but when you go to their home, you see Africa everywhere. But yet, they'll say, I'm not black. And then you'll meet very dark-skinned Dominicans that will tell you, yes, we have African cultural roots. Whereas you will meet the darkest Dominican that will tell you no. Because there was a huge political agenda
Sure,
during
absolutely.
my parents' time to
Trujillo.
whitenize
Sure.
through Trujillo, to whitenize the country and make the country white again as if it ever was white. That was the problem. It was never white. So I don't know where they were trying to go back to.
Yeah, well.
But that was, and he himself, Trujillo himself, was rumored to have a Haitian grandmother.
Yeah,
And he was
I read
also
that.
rumored to use bleaching powder and cream.
Yeah.
So
And
there's
the
a
mo-
lot of self-hate that goes into that.
Absolutely. You know, one of the interesting things, they share this island with Haiti.
Yeah.
And it was the Haitian Revolution, Toussaint Overture, that freed the island from the French. And I believe that Dominican Republic celebrates Independence Day. They don't celebrate the day the Haitian Revolution was successful and the colonizers left. They celebrate the day in which some connection with Spain.
No, actually, in my readings, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
the whole island was liberated.
Yeah, that's my point.
The whole island was liberated.
But the day of
But
that liberation.
Dominicans celebrate the day they were liberated from Haiti.
Yeah, that's it. That's what they do. They celebrate the day that they were liberated from Haiti.
We're not gonna
as
celebrate
opposed
the
to
day-
that Toussaint liberated.
We're not
the
going to
island.
celebrate the day that we ran Columbus out of here, hightailed this behind out of here. We're going
Yeah.
to celebrate the day we were liberated from them. So, and that's part of the whitenization of
Sure,
history
sure.
that was rewritten to cater to certain things.
Yeah.
Just like our history here
Yeah.
was rewritten. You know, going to school in elementary school and all you see is 2 sentences of black history, that had a huge impact.
Yeah. When I was in elementary school, if you did not speak English and you spoke only Spanish, they put you in special ed.
Oh my God.
That was it. No, seriously, there was no other thing, no other consideration. You went to special ed.
Yeah. So now here's the crazy thing. I grew up in bilingual education.
Okay. what
If
was that
you
like?
knew this much of Spanish, if all you knew was hola, you're going to bilingual. And at that time, that's basically what I knew was hola. Because my father and my uncle were hell-bent on me learning English.
Tell me about that experience with bilingual education at that time in the city of New York.
It was great because there was no one that I did not speak to that didn't know both Spanish and English.
Yes, yes.
You know, and all my friends, we could relate. We knew when to speak English, and that was when the parents were around. When the parents are around, you'll go from yeah, you know, she's here, right? You know, but it was selective favoritism because we spoke Spanish when it was convenient for us,
Right.
and we spoke English when it was convenient for us. But there was no person, unless you were not of the culture, that did not speak both languages, whereas now I run into people who are of Hispanic descent, including my family members who don't know not one word in Spanish.
Yeah.
And that's a loss of culture. That's a whole
Absolutely.
culture and an inheritance and cultural intelligence that they're losing out on.
And not only that, you know, a good portion of the world, you lose the ability to communicate with that whole part of the world.
Yes.
You know, language is
Yeah.
important, but we're in a culture that is so monolingual focused. Like
Yes.
English is the only thing. English, learn English and English, where other groups of people, you know, learn and speak 2 and 3 languages.
Exactly.
And that's part of the educational process.
And we're losing that as our
Yeah.
community. I walk through my community now and I wonder, where are the bodegas?
Oh,
All these things that I used to take for granted, like the bodegas, some of the hair salons, the barbershops, everything that made what it was and
yeah.
maybe still is the Washington Heights Dominican culture, was the culture very separate
yeah.
from the one in the country. It's disappearing slowly but surely.
excuse me, that's across the city, excuse me, we see this change, you know, the bodegas. Juan's Bodega is now John's New Delhi.
Yeah.
It's a change across the city. But let's go back to the issue of identity. How did you finally become comfortable with yourself? How did you this resolve?
When I had my Public Enemy Chuck D moments, when I started getting into listening to hip hop that was more cultural oriented and history based, I started reading on Malcolm X. And I was so heavily enthralled in his history and what he was teaching that I became to
Chuck D's
embrace.
with Public Enemy, right?
Yeah.
See, you didn't think I knew that. Not that old.
I started looking myself in the mirror and saying, it's okay to have curly hair. My hair is not bad hair the way other people say, oh, you have bad hair. Because all throughout my life, I thought that I had to perm my hair in order to be accepted.
Yes.
In order, you perm your hair to go to a wedding. You perm, my mother used to rush me and say, you got to perm your hair, your father's coming. So you had to perm your hair to look decent.
Yeah.
You had to wear some type of makeup. And I remember the first time I rebelled against the makeup. My mother said, what are you talking about? You need makeup. Look at your nose. Look, you need to hide these stuff. And I was like, no, I don't want to hide it. My nose isn't going away through makeup. And I don't want to perm my hair. Why is it acceptable for anybody else to why should I have straight hair? I wasn't born with it. Why should I it's suffering. You see it now. You have 7, 8-year-olds, they're putting lye and it burns your hair.
Yeah, sure.
And it stunts the growth of your hair. Yeah. So at some point in my young adulthood, in my 20s, I said, that's it.
That's it.
I'm embracing who I am.
Was there backlash?
Yes, huge backlash. I will go to places and certain people say, what is that? What is what? I'm wearing my hair natural. It'll be all afro. That would have like the biggest afro. And my friends are like, so, your hairdresser wasn't available today. Or I wouldn't wear makeup and I say it's okay not to wear it. I'm beautiful. God made me this way for a reason and embraces everything. It caused a lot of arguing.
Sure.
Because now I wasn't accepting of people telling me, oh, you have a wide nose like your dad.
Yeah.
I started rebelling against that. Like, you're not allowed to tell me that. Like, my wide nose is beautiful. I know who I am. Mm-hmm. And I walked in that grace of knowing who you are and accepting what's in the mirror as opposed to what's in the media.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it was a huge transition. It took from like 12 years old when you first start to wonder why you look the way you do till in my 30s.
Yeah,
and even now, it's still a transition when you go out with other people, even dating.
Yeah.
Certain people, they don't want you to embrace the ugliness of what it means to be black as somebody so eloquently perceived it. Yeah. And I said, well, it's not ugly unless you make it ugly. And it's a lot of self-hate involved in that.
Sure.
Why not embrace the gifts that God gave you? You gave me this face for a reason. My hair is like this for a reason. And it's all about educating yourself. Mm-hmm. And I started reading all these books that explained why most Dominicans in their house, there's an altar. It explained the beads. Yeah. It explained palo music.
That's all African rooted.
Yes. It explained some of our colloquialisms.
Yeah.
It explained language.
Absolutely.
And why we don't speak in the Castilian language, because it's not our language. And I started saying, I don't no longer want people to call me Spanish.
You trace some of the words to words from groups in West Africa.
Yeah.
It's this combination of words.
It explained mofongo. Mofongo. It explained mofongo. Why is it that we eat all this stuff? It explained. It explained batata. It explained all these other. It explained food.
West African food.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
it
know.
explained food. It explained why every newborn in the Dominican culture always has this little bracelet with a black fist. It explained that. It was like this, people do things every day and they don't know why they do it. They just know my mom did it, my grandmother did it, this is all the history
Yeah, absolutely.
of ancestry and slavery brought down to 2017.
Right.
And it also allowed me to deal with other people's self-hate issues.
Sure. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. But I see a difference, and I would say to some extent a significant difference in acceptance among at least young Dominicans that were born here, that have a much more diverse experience. This whole movement of Afro-Latina all across,
Yes.
it's big in hip hop.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
big in a spoken word. Well, I said hip hop, but I really
Yeah.
meant spoken word. 'Cause
Yeah.
I don't know anything really about hip hop except Chuck D.
So Chuck D.
Yes. But would you agree that it's much more common? It's in a greater level of acceptance.
Yes, there is. There is. Because now I recently found out that the first natural hair salon was established in the Dominican Republic, where women are now actually going to the hair salon not to get their hair permed, but to moisturize their afro. And they call it pajon.
What does that translate?
Pajon afro. But pajon can also be used as a negative term to say messed up hair.
These dual meanings.
There's dual meanings. And even now here with the Dominican Americans, because I'm a first generation Dominican American, but with the second and third generation, they embrace it. It's okay.
It's okay.
You'll see the women, they get their hair braided, they embrace their African roots. And they're not afraid to share it.
Yes.
And not afraid to speak on it. Whereas before, in my time, when I was a teenager, it was a hush-hush thing.
I hear you. Vicky, we can go on and on and on. I really appreciate you coming to the table.
Thank you.
And be willing to have this conversation.
Thank you.
I know also that you're a poet, and time is running out,
Okay.
so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, my God.
Why don't you recite one of your poems?
Well, I have a poem that I hope is relevant to what we're speaking. And the name of my poem, is Jambalaya. Goes a little bit like this. My lips are plump with pride, coated in an apologetic glaze of hope. My hips run wide from side to side, unsympathetic to the praise of Vogue. Thighs thicker than memory form, more than genetic factors may predispose. Curvy figure curbs in African symmetry negated by my ancestors long ago. A roller derby of self-hate misery rust into history Columbus rewrote. And it all came down to palo, perico ripiao, and chango. The only time I wasn't too brown or yellow to rock a fro. When my pelo malo was safe from derrizados and the heat of a wash and blow. Bustelo may be hard to swallow as we realize we still follow the black codes voluntarily, as if it's necessary to follow the ghetto cultural dress code or suffer the snobbery of group mentality that tells me I'm not black, I'm big boned. It's still slavery if you still measure me by my physical property and not my skin tone. But God favored me with a history that flows through me to the beats of drums from the Congo. Save me your good intentions of redirecting the attention away from my black nose. Deep down where the societal invention of self-hate arose was the rejection of both nations that make up my inner core. With ancestral skeletons that rot inside me with a stench I cannot ignore. Upon my seashores lies the uproars of a bigger war, one that will never question which side I'm fighting for. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. I have to get a copy of that.
Yes.
And I can't wait until your book comes out.
Thank you. Thank
Vicki,
you.
it's about that time. I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and remember, tune in next second Saturday, on the second Saturday of each month. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Holy,
That was really good.
thank you.
You got those skills here, huh?
I'm nervous as hell.
Yeah.
Am I sweating like a farm
Yeah,
animal?
you sweating like that. We're good.